For the Young at Heart is sponsored by Duville Life and Wellness Community, a commitment to care, a legacy of compassion. This is Duville.
Hello, welcome to For the Young at Heart. My name is Lucille Jerome. On today's program, we're going to be taking a look, we're going to be discussing home care services. There's been a lot of changes since we did this program, maybe 9 or 10 years ago. I have 3 experts with me today. We have Rachel Chaddock, who is the Executive Director for Circle Home, Angela Callahan, who is the Administrator for Commonwealth Nursing Services, and Ellen Jordan, who is the Options Counselor for Elder Services of Merrimack Valley. Thank you for coming today. There's a wealth of information to share, and I'm wondering a little bit about how you each got into this field. What prompted you to say, this is what I want to be doing?
So thank you for having us. I really appreciate that. It's interesting for me because I've pretty much spent my whole career working in home care and hospice services of some sort. The thing that really compelled me to work in that arena was back when I was a student at University of Lowell. I was getting my nursing degree, and they had a community health rotation in addition to acute care and hospital affiliations and things like that. But that home visiting portion for me kind of just ignited a spark. There was something about being in an individual's home, being a guest there, and also the opportunity to really function more independently and to be there for that patient. It was an unhurried environment where you could use all of the skills you'd been taught. Whereas, you know, the first year I was in nursing, I worked in a hospital, and it was very fast-paced, very task-oriented. There wasn't a lot of time for listening or for finding out what people wanted and what their goals were, and really helping them to meet them. So that's what drove me there.
Okay, all right then. What about you, Angela?
With me, my background was in long-term care. When I moved over to home care, what I really love about home care is you're helping support people to live in the environment that they want to. We're helping them with, you know, minor things such as housekeeping and laundry and shopping, but also with, you know, being there for them on a consistent basis. And our staff really gets to know the people, and they become almost like family. They know what they like. They know the way they want things set up. They know their little idiosyncrasies, and we're keeping them at home. Where if people want, that's where they really prefer to be. So I think it's nice and it's a value to have somebody at their own home and be around their own belongings in their own setting.
Okay. And Ellen, how about you?
Most of my career has been involved in human services, children, adults, families. Really only the last 10 years, health education and home care services. About 10 years ago, my mom ended up needing home care services and eventually hospice services. And it really was a great experience to be able to have her at home, have her needs met at home, both with home care and with ultimately with hospice. So.
Right. Okay. So when I listen to each of you, you have a passion for this, and you all have these experiences, and you get to know. You get to know the people in their home environment. And you're right, most people do prefer to stay at home. Okay? Explain a little bit about what exactly is home health care. What exactly is it? What kinds of things will be offered to people? There's a range of services, but not everybody requires all of the services that are available. So there must be an assessment first.
So I think when you think about home care services, each of us can speak to a different component because they tend to be very vast, what can be offered, and very different. So I'll speak a little bit about through Circle Home because the services that we would provide are really services that are covered by insurance.
Okay.
So typically what will happen is someone will go into a hospital, or they'll have a flare-up of an illness or a new diagnosis or a surgical procedure or something that makes them unstable. And so what will typically happen is then a referral source, a doctor or a hospital or a nursing home or elder service, anybody out there in the community who's interacting with them, including the patient or family, may pick up the phone and call us and say, we need some help at home and this is what we need. So if it's a patient or a family calling us, then we would follow up with their physician, because in order for us to bill insurance, we need to have physician orders and to provide that care, because what we're doing is considered skilled. So a lot of the things that we do are focused in on teaching people so that they can provide and learn some of their medical treatments and their med administration and dressing changes and things like that to help them remain at home and be safe and be independent. So nursing typically provides those kind of services, but in addition we have a full array of rehabilitation services. So if you think about particularly the elderly who tend to have falls at home, or they may have safety issues at home, or they might just be deconditioned because they've been in a hospital bed for a while, and so they come home and they're not as strong as they used to be. We can provide physical therapists, occupational therapists, and speech therapists. And then in addition, as an adjunct to those services, while they're receiving that skilled care, they can also receive nurses' aides to help them with their activities of daily living, like bathing and dressing, and then those are billed to insurance companies.
Okay. So you have a team.
We have a whole
You have a
team.
whole team. And the whole team includes maybe rehab, nurses, aides?
Yep, social worker may
Social
also
workers.
be involved,
Okay.
and then another service that is offered at home, you mentioned hospice, so we also have a hospice team.
Okay.
So very similar group of people, except they have expertise in symptom management and end-of-life care.
Okay.
And we add to that team a hospice medical director, a volunteer pool, bereavement and spiritual services.
Right, okay. And so from your perspective now, how do you fit in? There's a system, there's a whole system, and you're all parts of different pieces of that puzzle system.
So agencies like Commonwealth Nursing, we're in there more of a longer term. We're helping with activities of daily living on a long-term basis, where someone may have circle home for a short time when they've just had an acute episode. Commonwealth would continue that on an ongoing basis. So we get phone calls from people in the community, you know, my mother, my grandmother needs help, but I don't know what to do. What can you do to help us? So ordinarily what we would do is we would refer to elder services to see if they're eligible for anything.
Okay.
But we also would send a nurse out there and evaluate what they need. Now our staff is nursing, home health aides, homemakers. So a homemaker would provide care around the home. So it would be laundry, housekeeping, simple meal prep, pharmacy pickup, food shopping,
Okay.
and no personal care at all. A home health aide would do a combination of what I've already mentioned plus personal care.
Plus,
So they may say, we want 3 hours a week, we want 3 days a week. So we work with the client. If they go through elder services will determine how much they would cover. With us, we bill privately, or we have, some people have long-term care insurance that can be reimbursed, or a veteran's benefit. We do bill the veterans for VA benefits. We also provide nursing. So if someone's at home and they need a med setup, if they need a nurse to go in and fill a med pre-fill weekly, or a capillary blood sugar for diabetes, or an injection, or a lab draw, our nurses can do that on an ongoing basis. They don't need to have a skilled need in order for our nurses to be in there.
And you actually have some family members who pay to have like a shift of a nurse in the
Yes,
home as
yes.
well, right?
Right, it may not only be an hour or two for a shower. Sometimes if someone's working and they want someone to stay with their loved one for a shift, or if someone is maybe getting services with Circle Home, but those services aren't enough to cover all the day, they
Okay.
may hire Commonwealth as a
Okay.
complement to what they're already
Okay.
getting.
And when you say a shift, I'm thinking shift in a nursing home, but you're thinking shift in terms of the family member being away, so they might need someone from 9 to 3
Yes.
or something like that.
We can do anything from 1 hour to 24 hours.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
sometimes what happens is family get really exhausted from caring during the day or working, and then at nighttime, if they have a relative who's up a lot, or they just need to sleep through the night and they need medications administered, they'll hire someone so they can get a good night's sleep.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Now, how much information is there out in the community about this range? And we haven't even gotten to you, Ellen. We haven't even gotten to you yet. But the range that's available, how much do people really understand about this? Because I'm thinking not much until the crisis hits and then they suddenly have to get a service.
I think probably the first time people hear about it is if they're in the hospital or in a facility.
Okay.
And they work with their social worker or discharge planner who may be a nurse.
Okay.
And that's really where the information comes out.
Okay.
Most calls we get were cold calls where all of a sudden someone's in crisis or someone thinks we need some more extra help right now.
Okay.
But there isn't a lot of information out there unless you're really looking for it. And a lot of people don't even think of it until they're in need.
Right, right. Ellen?
I think the community agencies, councils on aging, in each town really make an effort to provide information that, might not be readily accessible or, you're not thinking about in a crisis. So hopefully the councils on aging are providing the contact information.
A lot of the senior centers have newsletters.
Yes.
Do they, like I'm thinking back, because I go to a senior center periodically for Zumba Gold. And,
Good for you.
and I'm not sure that I see very often something about what's available from home. There might be an ad for a service, but not an article about a service necessarily. So that might be something I might put a bug in somebody's ear, but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's okay.
But go ahead. So
So-
how do you, now you all fit in together. So from your perspective, what do you see?
Well, Elder Services would be the agency that would provide case management. We don't do the direct service ourselves.
Okay.
We contract with the home care agencies in each community. So if a consumer were to contact Elder Services, we would go out to do the home care intake, determine eligibility, and then help them decide the length of service that they would need, the type of services that they would need. Again, the different level of care, personal care, assistance with meal preparation, grocery shopping, homemaking. So you would have a case manager through Elder Services to help set up the services and then manage them ongoing.
Okay. So through your evaluation, with the family's input, with the senior citizens' input, you're able to then determine, well, they might need meal preparation maybe daily or only a couple of days a week because maybe a family member can freeze something for them other days, things like that.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Same thing with other services. So that all comes
Yes.
through the evaluation.
Right, they may not require personal care every day, perhaps 1 or 2 days a week.
Okay.
We provide Meals on Wheels, home-delivered meals through Elder Services. Not everybody chooses to use that service, so
Right.
a home health aide can certainly help with light meal preparation during the course of the day as well.
Okay. And you mentioned activities of daily living. I'm not sure people in our audience necessarily know what that know exactly what is an activity of daily living?
Bathing, dressing, grooming, anything that needs to sustain them in their home.
Okay. Using a telephone? What if the battery dies? Do you help them get new batteries if they only have the cell phone? So even something like that? Okay, all right.
I think one of the things that's difficult for people is, we talk about an array of services, and it's confusing at best, I think, for people who are working in the field doing this, because so much varies related to what someone's insurance will pay for, what they might need. And so sometimes I worry that people will say, well, I couldn't possibly qualify for that. And I think we were all talking earlier that it's really worth reaching out and placing a call to any of the organizations, because what you think may not really be the case. It's really that assessment that you talked about that helps us to determine what kind of services are out there and to steer people in the right direction. So I'm sure, you know, if there were a call to any of the organizations and we were to assess and say, well, that isn't something we could do, we can still hook people up to another option. And so it's important to kind of not second guess yourself and say, I don't think I'll qualify.
Okay, okay.
Absolutely, I'd still encourage folks to make the phone call, find out what the eligibility requirements are. And again, if one of our particular agencies cannot provide the services, we certainly have other community resources that we can refer
Because
them
there's
to.
an array of agencies providing the services.
Yes.
An array of that. It's a system. It's a whole system.
Right, and there are so many different things. So
Right.
even, you know, we talk a lot about home care, but I think as people who work in home care, we know what other community resources might be out there too. So maybe home care might not be the appropriate thing, but maybe an adult day health might be appropriate. Maybe there's something else that we can hook people into that might better meet their needs.
Okay. Again, there's a whole system out there, and it's working together in different ways.
Absolutely.
And you're treating people, they're individuals. So it's an individualized care plan, basically, right?
Right.
An individualized care plan.
And that's usually what, if somebody will call and they ask, we'll ask them questions. What do you think you need? What is your loved one? Or what do you feel your needs are? Sometimes we can meet those needs. Sometimes we will refer to another agency. Or they may think they need a nurse, but they could function with a home health aide. So we talk them through it. We do a lot of referrals to Elder Services, and in turn, we also get referrals back from Elder Services, but we're one of many agencies that Elder Service deals with. But I think our question always is, well, who's going to pay for it? And that's when we say to them, talk to Elder Services, see what programs they have that your loved one may fit into. And you may have a copay on the other end, but Elder Services will work with you with that.
Okay.
And as Rachel said, to echo that, don't think you're not eligible for something because you possibly could be.
You might very well be.
And typically in a home care agency like Circle Home, where we're billing insurance, they tend to model after Medicare. And so when you think about Medicare coverage, they really have a couple of things that they look at for whether they'll reimburse. One of them is whether you're homebound. So that is the most confusing term, homebound. What does that mean? And many people will ask them, are you homebound? Well, people don't know how to answer that. Of course I'm not homebound. Or they're in the hospital bed lying there and know I was driving my car before I came in. But the real question is, are you going to be able to do some of these things when you return home until you get your strength back? So homebound really, from a strict definition perspective, is you leave the house infrequently for non-medical needs, and you're allowed to leave for medical purposes. That doesn't negate you from being homebound, but if you were going to go to church once a week or to the hairdresser or something like that, that doesn't negate you from being homebound either. And there has to be some sort of a taxing effort, so it's not an easy task for you to get out of the house. The second thing in the insurance world is they're looking for skill. So something that the average layperson can't do that requires someone with the expertise and knowledge of a nurse or a therapist. And then finally, they're looking for, Angela mentioned, you do more long-term services. We do more short-term services. So they're not looking for big, long shifts of time and things that go on forever and ever. It's to deal with an acute episode. And then when you get to hospice, it's a whole other world, because you don't have to be homebound. And they're really generally just looking for a prognosis of 6 months or less, and that the focus is on symptom management.
As you're all talking, I'm thinking people, I think because I mentioned earlier on my way in, someone asked me about being homebound, what did that mean? And as we're talking, I'm thinking people associate homebound with maybe being bedbound. I think that's a confusing, am I right on that? Bedbound.
I think so. I mean,
Okay.
I think also there are a number of people who think they aren't homebound because they have a vision in their head of what they're able to do and not able to do. But when you think about it, and an example I'll give is my dad had home care services for a while. If anyone ever asked him if he was homebound, he would have said absolutely not. But he also would have told you he can go out and drive his lawnmower, which he couldn't do. And he had you know, a rolling walker and all these devices. But he wasn't
But he wasn't homebound.
because
Right.
in our mind, I'm not homebound.
That's
I haven't
right.
been homebound
Yeah.
for 80-something years.
Yeah.
Of course I'm not homebound.
Do you come across that too?
Yes,
Yeah?
absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you all have lots of examples
Yeah.
of that. So basically, there's something in people's heads, and it's individual also.
Absolutely.
That's also an individual thing for them. Okay. Homebound. What do you mean homebound?
Right. Of course
Okay.
I leave the house. And
Okay.
of course I want to leave the house. And then those are all really good things because we do want people
of
to
course,
be able to
of
get out.
course, of course. So we've got a range of social services that are available, a range of healthcare services that are available. It all depends on an assessment that's individualized per person. Now, do you often have family members around when you're doing that, or do you, in the hospital, it might be a little bit different, but when they're at home or they come to you, do you want to have a family member there also? See, my preference would be the elder first, but that's just my thing. And then family members helping out if needed, or is that incorrect?
You know, I think it's as individual as
There
the
you go.
person is. So, I
Okay.
mean, there are some people that we care for who have absolutely no caregiver, no family member, no one as a resource to them. And then there are other individuals who want a family member to be present, or they're
Right.
living in a family member's home and they have a support system that they want included. So we kind of go with the flow with what they want.
I just thought of something in terms of friendly visiting in the home. Some churches and synagogues, they might have someone in the parish who might do that on a volunteer basis. Does that become somehow part of the care plan or treatment plan, or is that totally individualized and separate?
That would be individualized and separate.
Separate.
Many times, as Rachel said, there's no caregiver. A lot of our clients, we may be the only people they see. They don't really have a lot of other support. And that's what's so
Okay.
important, that we're keeping them in their home and
Yeah.
we're maintaining.
Yeah.
I also wanted to add, you talked about volunteers and family members. It's very important if someone is hiring someone for home care, they go through an agency, other than if they want to do like a PCA program. But the agencies, we have to do background checks, we have to do criminal checks. You know, you wouldn't want them hiring someone that didn't have a background check or a criminal check. People may not want to go through the process of going through an agency.
I
They may
didn't
get
think of
someone out of
that.
the paper. It may be less expensive for them. But those people aren't trained, they're not skilled, they don't have workman's comp, and they're not background checked. So, you know, you really don't want to have any risks for elder abuse, which could
Right.
happen if you have anybody just coming in your house taking care of you.
And you supervise them too.
We
So-
supervise,
Okay.
right,
So-
right. They're
So-
not out there by themselves. Our supervisors are out there, you know, seeing what's going on, and we're communicating with our staff as well as with the consumer and the client on a very frequent basis.
And you have someone 24 hours on call, and at Circle Home, we have a nurse on call
Okay.
24 hours
Okay.
a day too. So those are, I mean, you don't typically have that kind of access
Right.
to a individual if you're hiring privately like that, someone who's doing some oversight.
Okay, I hadn't thought about that being a possible issue, but I can see where it would be.
And I think a lot of times people go that route because they say, oh, it's less expensive.
And easier maybe,
and-
or maybe
and
they know somebody
easier.
who knows somebody who knows
Right.
somebody.
Right, but you do kind of, particularly if you're working with the elderly or disabled who tend to be a vulnerable group
Right.
in the home, you run some risks with that.
Okay. Do you come across that too, Ellen?
Oh, yes, Elder Services contracts with the home care agencies
Okay.
that we use. So
Okay.
in addition to their process of hiring and background checks and vetting their workers, they also hold a contract with Elder Services. So there's definitely that safety net there as well.
Safety, I like that phrase, the safety net,
Yeah.
because we are dealing with frail elders.
Right,
who
and you
need
have,
care.
you have many points of contact.
Sure, sure. There was something that else was asked about earlier today when I was on my way in, something about telehealth or virtual health care, and I'm not sure what that is. I'm sure each of you has an example or something about what that means. I just wrote it down because I didn't know what that was.
So it's so interesting because, you know, we were established back in 1909 and probably more recently known as the VNA of Greater Lowell. And when I think back to that time period and where we are today, boy, has technology made changes, huge changes in how we function. And so when you talk about virtual kind of health care, we offer a service and a program which is a telehealth program.
Okay.
So basically, individuals will have a device brought into their home, and they'll be taught to take their blood pressure, their weight, a little thing on their finger will tell them their oxygen level, and we also get their heart rate from it, and then we can also set them up so that they get education or teaching through the device and
gosh,
take
okay.
tests and quizzes through it. And that information is then transmitted either through a cell phone connection or through their home phone connection back to our office,
Okay.
where anything that is out of the ordinary for that individual flags. Our nurse, who works 7 days a week, looks and says, so-and-so's having a problem. And it might be as simple as, that patient didn't do any readings today. How come? Because they're sick enough they couldn't get out of bed to get to the machine.
All right.
Because they've fallen. So it triggers a phone call from our nurse to double check what's happening in that home and decide whether or not we need to make a visit. For families, it's real reassuring.
Sure, I'm sure it is.
Particularly families who are working all day or who are in a different even state and can't monitor their relative the way they'd want.
We're going to be winding down very shortly, actually. Is there anything you think we have forgotten that maybe we want to make sure we touch on? Anything at all? Because I want, first of all, pick up the phone, call Elder Services. There will be an assessment. Don't even think about it. They will help you. That would be my thing. What else do we want to make sure? Because as we run down, did we leave anything out?
I think it's important for consumers to know that our services are not either or.
There you go.
Elder services, home care services work in conjunction with VNA and skilled services.
Right,
So
okay.
if you have a need for both, then both can be
There you
provided.
go, there you go. Angela, as we have a half a minute?
I think a good point was made about elder service having case managers too,
Right.
because
Right.
not only do they have the case manager, they also have the supervisor, the RN supervisor at the agency that they're
Right.
contracting with.
Yeah.
So there's a couple levels that are going to be supervising and work as a case manager with that client at home.
I like the idea that there really is a whole system out there, and there's interrelationships between pieces of that system. I want to thank you all for coming today, and I want to thank our audience for watching. We've covered a lot of territory in this during this program, and I'm just so pleased. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
For the Young at Heart is sponsored by Duville Life and Wellness Community, a commitment to care, a legacy of compassion. This is Duville.